The morning started like any other, with the comforting sound of birds outside and the slightly less comforting creak of Samuel Harris's old recliner. At 36 years old, Samuel didn't exactly live a glamorous life. No, his world was a far cry from those glossy TV commercials with perfect families and sparkling kitchens. His little rental house on the south side of Chicago was, as he liked to joke, quaint enough to have its own horror movie franchise. Every morning, Samuel's routine was sacred. A strong cup of coffee that could wake the dead, a quick jog around the block, because heart attacks don't take holidays, and a trip to the grocery store for some fresh fruit. He called it his 3-step survival guide to staying sane. Life had thrown Samuel some curveballs lately, though. His job on the graveyard shift at a warehouse was sucking the soul right out of him. He spent nights moving boxes heavier than his problems, all for a paycheck that barely stretched to cover rent, utilities, and child support for his 7-year-old daughter, Mia. And let's not even talk about his ex-wife. If passive aggressiveness were an Olympic sport, she'd have more gold medals than Michael Phelps. But hey, Samuel wasn't bitter. No, sir. He had his daughter's laugh to hold on to, and every other weekend, when Mia stayed with him, the world didn't seem so bleak. This morning, though, something felt off. Maybe it was the way the air seemed a little heavier. Or maybe it was just his imagination. Paranoia doesn't pay the bills, Samuel, he muttered to himself, stepping into his beat-up sneakers. They squeaked in protest like they too were tired of the daily grind. The walk to Mart's grocery was uneventful, as always. The neighborhood was quiet, save for the occasional bark of a dog or the rumble of an old truck. Samuel pushed open the store's glass door, and the little bell jingled overhead, announcing his arrival. "Morning, Kate," he said, nodding to the cashier, a middle-aged woman who always seemed just a little too cheery for someone stuck behind a counter all day. "Morning, Samuel. How's Mia?" she chirped, her smile as bright as the neon signs in the beer aisle. "She's good. Smarter than me, which isn't saying much," he replied with a smirk, grabbing a basket and heading toward the produce section. The store was nearly empty, just the way he liked it. He browsed through the apples, picking them up one by one like he was auditioning them for a role in a fruit salad. And then it happened. The calm shattered like a dropped jar of pickles. The front doors slammed open with a force that rattled the windows, and 2 white police officers stormed in like they were busting a drug cartel. Their boots echoed against the tile floor, and the taller one barked out, "Everyone stay where you are!" Samuel froze, an apple still in his hand. His first thought was, what the fuck is going on? His second thought was, please don't let this be about me. Spoiler alert, it was about him. "You!" the shorter cop shouted, pointing directly at Samuel. "Put the apple down and get on the ground. Now." Samuel blinked. "Are you serious right now? It's an apple, not a grenade." "Do not resist!" the taller cop yelled, already advancing toward him like a linebacker at the Super Bowl. Kate gasped from behind the counter. "What's going on?" "Samuel, what did you do?" Samuel raised his hands, still holding the apple. "Nothing. I came here for fruit, not a felony." But they weren't listening. Before he could even process what was happening, the shorter cop grabbed his arm, twisting it behind his back with the kind of enthusiasm that suggested he'd been waiting all week to do this. "Ow, ow, okay. Is this really necessary?" Samuel winced as the cuffs clicked around his wrists. "Stop talking," the cop snapped, yanking him toward the door. As they dragged him out of the store, Samuel caught a glimpse of Kate's horrified face. He couldn't help but yell over his shoulder, "Hey, save me a bag of those Fuji apples, will you?" Outside, the scene was even worse. A squad car was parked at an angle, its lights flashing like a disco ball from hell. Neighbors peeked out from behind curtains, their curiosity palpable. Samuel felt their eyes boring into him, like he was the entertainment for the day. The taller cop shoved him into the back seat of the car, slamming the door hard enough to make the whole vehicle shudder. Samuel sat there, stunned, as they sped off. His mind raced, trying to piece together what the hell had just happened. "What the fuck did I even do?" he muttered to himself. His reflection in the bulletproof glass stared back at him, just as confused. As the squad car wove through traffic, Samuel's frustration bubbled over. "Hey, you want to tell me what this is about? Or are we just playing a game of guess the crime?" The taller cop glanced at him through the rearview mirror. "You'll find out soon enough." "Oh, great." Cryptic and condescending. "Just what I needed today," Samuel snapped, leaning back against the seat. He had no idea what was waiting for him at the station, but one thing was clear. His day had gone from boring to batshit crazy in record time. And the worst part? This was just the beginning. The ride to the station felt longer than a Monday after vacation. Samuel Harris sat squashed in the back of the squad car, still trying to figure out what kind of Twilight Zone episode he'd stumbled into. His wrists were raw from the cuffs. And his patience? Yeah, that was gone the second they threw him against the hood of the car. "Hey, Officer Sunshine?" Samuel piped up, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Mind telling me what the hell I'm here for? Or do I have to guess like some kind of twisted carnival game?" The taller cop in the driver's seat shot him a look in the rearview mirror. "You know damn well what you did." "Oh, sure, let me check my calendar. Was it rob a bank day? Maybe jaywalk too aggressively?" Samuel rolled his eyes so hard he half expected them to pop out of his skull. The shorter cop, who clearly skipped the day they taught charm in the academy, barked back, "Save it. You're lucky we didn't have to use force." "Force? Dude, you twisted my arm like you were auditioning for a pro wrestling league," Samuel snapped. "Next time, maybe try using your words first." Radical idea, I know. At the station, things didn't get any better. Samuel was dumped in a cold gray interrogation room that smelled like bad coffee and broken dreams. Across the table sat a grizzled detective with a face that could curdle milk. "Let's cut the crap," the detective growled, slapping a grainy photo on the table. "Is this you?" Samuel leaned forward, staring at the image. It showed a man in a hoodie, mid-heist, holding up a cashier with what looked like a weapon. He let out a bitter laugh. "Wow, that guy looks about as much like me as George Clooney. What's next? You want to blame me for global warming too?" The detective wasn't amused. "You match the description. Black male, early 30s, about 6 feet tall." "Wow, congrats," Samuel interrupted. "You just described half the dudes in this city. Got anything else, or are we just freeballing accusations today?" The detective leaned in closer, his coffee breath doing nothing for Samuel's mood. "You were seen entering the store. Don't play games with me." "Yeah, because buying apples is a crime now? Should I have gone for oranges instead? Real talk, this is embarrassing. For you." Hours passed, and the frustration was mounting on both sides. Samuel refused to back down, and the cops didn't have anything concrete to pin on him. They kept circling back to the same questions, hoping he'd crack. But Samuel, he wasn't having it. "You know what?" he finally said, leaning back in the chair, cuffs clinking against the table. "I'm done talking until you get someone in here with an IQ higher than my grocery bill. Call my lawyer." The room went quiet, the tension thick enough to slice with a butter knife. Samuel smirked. "Oh, what's that? Awkward silence? Thought so." It was clear now. Whatever game they were playing, they had nothing. But Samuel knew one thing for sure. He wasn't walking out of this without a fight. The courtroom smelled like cheap disinfectant and bad decisions. Samuel Harris sat at the defendant's table. His lawyer, a guy named Darren, who looked like he moonlit as a car salesman, flipping through a stack of papers like his life depended on it. "Relax, Samuel," Darren muttered under his breath. "This is just procedure." "Procedure," Samuel shot back. "Dude, I've been treated like a Walmart discount criminal for buying apples. If this is procedure, your system's broken." The room buzzed with quiet murmurs as the judge entered. People in the gallery whispered and stared like they were watching the pilot episode of Justice Gone Wrong. Samuel resisted the urge to stand up and yell, "I'm not the main character here, people." The prosecution started with their piece de resistance, grainy security footage. The video played on a small monitor, showing a man in a hoodie committing the robbery. The prosecutor, a smug guy in a suit that screamed overcompensating, pointed to the screen dramatically. "This is the man who committed the crime," he said, his voice dripping with false confidence. "The defendant, Samuel Harris." Samuel leaned over to Darren. "Did he just say that like it's a plot twist?" "Bro, I've seen better setups on reality TV." Darren waved him off. "Patience." Then came the kicker. The footage continued to roll, and there it was, the timestamp. 5 minutes later, clear as day, Samuel strolled into the store, casually picking up a basket like he didn't have a care in the world. The courtroom fell silent. The prosecutor fumbled with his notes. Samuel couldn't resist. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, and let out a low whistle. "Well, well, well," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Looks like Houdini here robbed the place and teleported out before I even showed up. Someone call the FBI. We've got a time-traveling thief on our hands." Even the judge smirked. The jury exchanged glances, and Darren stood up, his confidence suddenly through the roof. "Ladies and gentlemen, my client clearly wasn't even in the store during the robbery. The evidence speaks for itself." It was game over. The prosecutor's case crumbled faster than a cookie in hot tea. As the judge dismissed the charges, Samuel stood up, locking eyes with the officers who had dragged him in. "Y'all might want to get your eyes checked," he said, grinning. "Apple buyers and robbers? Different hobbies, last I checked." The courtroom erupted in murmurs as Samuel walked out, free, but far from done. Samuel Harris walked out of the courtroom with the swagger of a man who had just stared down the system and lived to tell the tale. Sure, he was free now, but the sting of humiliation still burned deep. The cops, the accusations, the cuffs, it wasn't something you just shrugged off with a no big deal. But Samuel, he wasn't about to let them off that easy. 2 weeks later, he sat across from his lawyer, Darren, in a small office that smelled faintly of stale coffee and printer ink. "So what are we thinking?" Darren asked, pushing his glasses up. "You want an apology? A press conference?" "An apology?" Samuel leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Man, screw that. I want them to feel it. Like $10, 000 feel it." Darren smirked. "I like the way you think." The lawsuit made waves. Headlines splashed across local news stations. Man wrongfully arrested sues police for damages. The footage from the trial went viral, with people replaying Samuel's sarcastic commentary like he was some kind of folk hero. Comments poured in online, praising him for calling out the injustice with humor and grit. By the time the city agreed to settle, Samuel's name was everywhere. The cops involved, they were about as popular as a bad Yelp review. Samuel took the $10,000 settlement and did something that silenced even his harshest critics. He set up a college fund for his 7-year-old daughter, Mia. When asked about it during a local news interview, he grinned at the camera and said, "I figured if I can't fix the system for myself, maybe I can make sure my daughter won't have to deal with this bullshit." The mic drop was real. Walking out of the studio that day, Samuel finally felt the weight lift. Justice? Not perfect. Satisfaction? Oh, hell yes. Because if there was one thing he'd learned, it was this. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just living well, it's living loud. Thank you all for tuning in and listening to this story. We hope it resonated with you and kept you hooked until the very end. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel, Life Mosaic, where we bring you the most captivating and thought-provoking stories. We're here for you, and we promise there's so much more coming your way. Take care, and we'll see you tomorrow with another incredible story. Stay safe, stay curious, and keep coming back for more.